Absolutely. Welcome back. Now joining us is Bill Bender, Sporting News national college football writer on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. All right, Bill, obviously the elephant in the room, the reason we're bringing you on other than chatting with you about college football is you've produced a list of the top 130 FBS coaches. I imagine it took you a minute to figure out that list.
Yeah, it's a labor we do every year. I think I come on and talk to you guys each year about them. It's not easy to rank 130 FBS coaches. It's not even easy to do number one anymore because whereas it was Nick Saban as a default setting, now we're in a situation where Dabo's won 2 of the last 3, and I don't know. Did I get it right? I'll leave that to you guys.
Yeah, that's up for debate, right? Given the way Clemson and Alabama have fared the last couple of years, pretty interesting. And Kalani Sitake, BYU head coach, comes in at number 85. What went into placing Kalani Sitake as the 85th best coach in FBS?
Well, obviously not much movement from last year. It's, I think, the exact same spot we had them. They did take a step in the right direction, 7-6, winning the bowl game. You asked what we put into this. It's a little bit of everything. I look at overall record. I look at record at the school. I look at 3-year record, which obviously here we're at 20-19. And then the hard part to do is Power 5 versus Group of 5 versus independent, program expectations at a place like Duke versus a place like Michigan. BYU's in that tough spot as an independent as well because it's hard to gauge them against everybody else because I don't consider them a Group of 5 program, and I kind of treat them as a Power 5 program at this point.
Well, and you mentioned some things are just kind of unknown, and there's a lot of different things that you look at, but I've got to imagine it is pretty difficult because there are so many unknowns about all of these coaches.
Oh, absolutely. I think the hardest part is taking a coach like Pat Fitzgerald, who took Northwestern to the Big Ten championship, but it was a 5-loss team. And then you look at what he's done there, everything's great, versus, let's say, Gus Malzahn. I think I tell you guys this every year. Gus Malzahn's the hardest coach on this list to rank because he has won an SEC championship. He has played or led Auburn to a BCS championship game, but he's also lost 5 or more games in 6 seasons. So you're asking me to kind of balance that in with the SEC coaches. It's tough. I agonize over this list. I'm glad when it's over and I turn my notifications off because I know everybody's going to disagree with it anyway.
That's what I wanted to ask. I'm really curious, and I guess if you turn your notifications off, you're not getting them. But what kind of pushback do you get? Because anytime you do a list, regardless of how much time and effort goes into it, you're putting your opinion out there, and there's going to be people that just don't like it. What kind of pushback do you get from something like this?
Well, I never block people or mute people on Twitter.
It's great, Bill. You need to try it. It's fantastic.
I've never done that. Like somebody, because I just, they're going to say what they're going to say about my articles or my opinions or my dad life, whatever. But I do get a lot of pushback. It's always, but I never understood the move where somebody agrees with 1 or 2 things and then the entire list is garbage. So I don't know. But I do get a lot of pushback from the SEC crowd, the ACC crowd, especially this year, because as you guys noticed, after Dabo, the rest of the ACC is really hard to rank.
And there's Bronco Mendenhall in there. We keep tabs on him with Virginia. They're growing and whatnot. But, yeah, that's the unenviable task, right, is rating all 130 coaches. Talking to Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Kalani Sitake going into its 4th season. First season went 9-4. 4-9, and then this last season 7-6. So, how would you evaluate and describe what Kalani Sitake has done in his 3 seasons at BYU?
Well, I think again, getting back to the bowl game, and there are I could lie to you and say I watch every bowl game. I did watch all of BYU's bowl game last year because it involved a MAC team as well. Wilson played a great game, and I think winning that bowl game, having a winning season, is something to build on because I know when I talked to you guys last year, the temperature was a little bit different there. I think you can continue to grow around Wilson. There's obviously questions about the offense, the running game, who's going to be that guy. I like that the defense has 3 guys back in the secondary. I'm always big on good secondary. So I think you continue to build on that. And as I talk about with you guys every year, trick with BYU is it's a program that has to be at the top of its game in September because that's when all the Power 5 hammers are.
Well, and we obviously spend a lot of time talking about the schedule. When you look at just the first month, what you referenced in September, who do you think is the best team on BYU's schedule this entire season? I mean, I would assume most people are going to focus on that first month. Who do you think is the best team on BYU's schedule?
Washington, for sure. I think Washington with Eason, the defending Pac-12 champion, a team that has built something with Chris Peterson that is kind of an enhanced model of what he had at Boise. But, the point I'm making about that schedule is I was looking at it before it came on today, and when you go through October, so September and October, and the only teams on your schedule that didn't make a bowl game are USC and Tennessee, that tells you something. I mean, because most people would look at those games as the toughest games on the schedule based on the brand name value, I guess.
One of my annoying agenda items on this program is that the schedule is too hard, Bill. I just think it's too difficult if BYU wants to make a splash, not for a week, but for a season. I just think it's too hard. I think it's probably 2 games too hard. What do you think about it?
Well, yeah, I agree. I think it is too hard because on one end, and I remember talking to Bronco Mendenhall about this when he was the coach of BYU, he always referenced a magic wand and how many Power 5 teams do we have to play. And sometimes it can be too many because if you want to do an independent comparison, I'd have to break down the numbers, but I would argue that this schedule's right up there, if not more difficult than Notre Dame. The Notre Dame fans aren't going to want to hear that. But I would say Notre Dame, though, they do have tough road games at Georgia, Michigan, and Stanford this year. So theirs might be a little tougher. Army, though. Let's talk about Army, a team that's won 21 games the last 2 years. They have the one big game at Michigan. So is that the model you guys want to take, where you play the one big game, maybe win that, maybe win 10 or 11? Because Army is getting a lot of attention right now. They might be ranked to start the season.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle, what BYU's doing and what Army's doing, in that BYU still needs to sell tickets. They still need to appease ESPN and not say no too often to the games that ESPN is saying, hey, do you want to play this? Do you want to play this? Yet there's probably a middle ground because I don't think you can win fewer than 10 games as a non-Power 5 team and make a seasonal splash. What do you think of that?
I agree. I think 10 is the minimum. So, I mean, just to make the point about Army, if they lose to Michigan, we'll all forget about them. They'll probably go 10-2, maybe 9-3, but they won't get into a New Year's Day 6 bowl like that. If BYU somehow won 10 games against the schedule they're playing this year, and again, it's not just the Power 5 teams. You're playing upper class group of 5 schools. South Florida is an upper class team with Charlie Strong. Boise, you guys know how good they are. We've seen it for years. Utah State has a coaching transition, but they'll still be tough. I mean, there's not a lot of weeks off for the Cougars this year.
Well, with that being said, then when you look at this schedule and how difficult it is to start the year, and you take into account the players that are coming back, and you have Zach Wilson, hopefully 100% healthy, what do you think is a realistic win total for this team this upcoming season?
I think you got to shoot to get to 8, and whatever you can get from that would be great. I remember playing this game with you guys last year of which one of those 4 would they beat, and I think I said if BYU went 2-2 against those first 4 teams, that they'd be in business, and then they ran into some hiccups along the way against the Northern Illinois and Boise's. So if you could go through Utah, Tennessee, USC, and Washington and win 2 somehow, and then you get into the rest of the schedule and get to 8 or 9, I think that's a successful season. If you win the bowl game on top of it and you get to the 10th win, you build that kind of momentum like Army did this year. And you know what? A lot of that momentum with Army was based on the 70 they hung on Houston in the bowl game.
Absolutely, and the fact that they went to OT or it was close with Oklahoma was pretty good as well. Talking to Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Zach Wilson, you mentioned you watched the entire famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Zach Wilson, 18 for 18, I think 321, 4 touchdowns. He was fantastic. Left BYU fans very excited about the sophomore-to-be quarterback going into 2019. What do you expect from the sophomore signal caller?
No, the biggest reason I stuck with that game is I was waiting for him to incomplete a pass. And it was like
so we're waiting.
Kind of like, yeah, like it was like a no-hitter. You're like, is he going to miss? My son and I do remember watching it, and part of it was, yeah, I think my mom was here, so I was trying to avoid her a little bit. But no, don't tell her that.
Mom or mother-in-law?
No, my mom was. I think my mom stopped by, and I was like, I really got to get into this BYU game, Mom. No, I'm good, of course. But no, I do love my mother, and I think with Wilson, as you guys know, I mean, I guess this is a lazy thing to say, but BYU is a program that runs on that elite quarterback, and if Wilson can develop into an elite quarterback passing the football, yeah, they're going to be something to contend with. I mentioned the running game, and it looks like there was a little bit of a committee last year. You got Katoa. Is he a guy that he averaged 5.6 yards per carry last year? That's pretty good. And he's got good targets around him. I think this could be a potent offense.
Bill, let's wrap things up with this. Our question of the day today is, what's the greatest sports moment you've shared with your dad? If you were to look back on maybe sports moments you shared with your dad, or as a dad now with your own kids, is there anything that comes to mind in terms of a sports moment sharing either with your dad or as a dad with your kids?
Oh, I got a good one. And, my dad, I came up with my dad and loved sports because of him, and I wouldn't want to disrespect him because, I mean, this is why I do the job that I do. But having my own son and, I'm a huge Packers fan. So when they beat Dallas a couple years in the playoffs, and Dallas ruined my childhood with all those Emmitt Smith teams, to see my son so happy about a Green Bay playoff win against the Dallas Cowboys was pretty cool for me. And, I didn't have that moment in high school. Again, I still have nightmares about Emmitt Smith sometimes.
No doubt. There were a lot of teams in that category. Well, Bill, we appreciate the time. It's our yearly chat in the summer, and we look forward to 2020's chat.
Yeah, let's do it again, and maybe get one in the season. You guys are great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.